Welcome back to today's episode of TSARP. I'm your host, Andrew Weir, and today we have a very special guest. He was the founder of TotallyScience.co, and now he's working on a very cool project called Cal AI, which helps you track your calories. It's Zach Yadagari. If you want
Hi.
to, if you want to introduce yourself a little bit more, you can.
Sure. So I'm Zach. Thank you for having me on the podcast today, Andrew. I'm pretty excited to get into it. I have founded multiple things in the past few years. I've always loved building things ever since I was young, but Totally Science and Cal AI are two of the most notable, as you have said.
So what got you into coding when you were younger? What made you say that's what you wanted to start learning?
So I had a love of video games, which many kids do. And so I wanted to build my own. I had many ideas. I actually had paper that I would write down my ideas on and sketch graphics for what the different screens would look like. But I had no idea how to actually, where to take that, how to actually put that into code. I didn't even know what coding was, but I signed up for a summer camp and then eventually I got into it and loved it right away.
That's awesome. And what was the first project you worked on?
So the first project I've ever made was a little maze game where, well, it was just pretty basic. It was made in Scratch, as many people started, and I think that was actually something I loved. I made lots of games in Scratch. I think the simplicity of it makes it great for beginners. And the maze game I made, it was just your basic game. You go through a maze. If you hit a wall, you restart.
Gotcha. All right. And that was the first language you learned, Scratch?
Scratch, though I don't know if I would consider it a language.
Yeah, I see what you mean. And then where did you go from there coding-wise? What did you learn next?
So I got into Python, just the basics, but I kind of took a big jump from Scratch to C Sharp because following my passion of creating video games, I started making them in Unity. Unity is a game engine which uses C Sharp, and it's actually used by a lot of professional game studios. So I thought it was cool that I was doing that at a young age. I put my first game on the App Store that I made on Unity when I was 12,
Nice. And what app store was that?
the iPhone App Store.
Gotcha. All right. Yeah, I learned Unity too when I was younger, but I only put it on the Android App Store because I think that was the cheaper option at the time. All right. And then what was your first what made you start Totally Science?
So, first of all, I'll say for those people who don't know, Totally Science was in or is an unblocked gaming website where you can play games and they are unblocked in school. It has a few techniques to bypass school blocking systems. I was inspired to create it because I was sitting in my classroom in eighth grade. I looked around. Keep in mind, this was right after COVID. So schools had given out Chromebooks to every student in order to reduce contact. And so looking around, everyone had games out. They were just playing games. No one was taking school seriously. I mean, we were in middle school. It was COVID. It was a crazy time. And I noticed people had multiple tabs open and different websites for each game. So I identified the opportunity to combine all of these games on different websites under one website, which acted as a hub, and that was Totally Science.
Gotcha. And how did you market Totally Science? Because that's normally one of the hardest parts for people starting websites is how do they get it out to people?
Definitely. So I went the route of social media. I created content myself, just recording myself in class, playing on the website, and I attained a few million views from the videos I posted, and that in turn drove 5 million users to using the site over 2 years.
Wow. And then what updates did you make to it along those years?
So the first design looked awful. It was horrendous, and it was surprising that I had that much traffic going to it just based off how it looked. And what was also surprising, and this is something maybe you'll think is funny, I know you did Kidoyo too. Kidoyo was the camp that got me into coding in the first place, and they had their own hosting service and platform to build websites off. So the first version of Totally Science I had running off of their servers, and I had hundreds of thousands of people going to it. And so it wasn't my own, it was some website editor on a website, which was pretty bad. So one of the first things I did was switch over to Visual Studio, starting to use GitHub and hosting on a virtual private server.
Gotcha. All right. And yeah, we've had the Kidoyo mentors on here a bunch of times. Our viewers know them very well. Did they ever say anything to you when you had like hundreds of thousands of people coming through their servers? Like, did they ever message you?
So I was wondering if that would happen. I waited for that day to come. Sadly, it hasn't. I was waiting to get like an email or a call saying like, what's going on? Why are there so many users coming to your site? You're slowing down the website for everyone else. But unfortunately, that did not happen.
Yeah, maybe next time we'll have them on, maybe I'll ask them about, did they even know that was going on at the time? I mean, I assume they did when they had to see a spike in traffic or something.
I mean, yeah, if they had the dashboards, I'm really curious. If you could let me know of that, I would actually love to know if they were aware of any spikes.
Yeah, I'll talk to them. And did you have any like analytics tools on the website to see how many people were coming in?
So on Kid Oyo's site, no. I just had a website view counter that I took from some other thing. It was just some like free JavaScript that I pasted, and it had a limit. After you've reached like a certain amount, it would cut you off. So I reached that limit. It was like only 3,000 unique users. But then when I uploaded the website onto GitHub and hosted it myself, I saw immediately on Google Analytics, we were getting 350,000 monthly users.
Wow. And then how did you expand that from there? Like, where did you go with it?
So one of the biggest improvements was the design, which I made that way better. Something else, which was actually, so in the beginning, all of the games were hosted as static HTML files. I would have like game1.html, game2.html, game3.html. And one of the biggest improvements was making everything automatic. So we just had game.html, and when you went to it, we would have a parameter in the URL. So instead of having separate static pages for each game, it would be based on the parameter for what game it loads. And that was actually an addition by a former Kidoyo student, Henry Lang Mack, who helped out with the project for a couple days and then didn't want to continue.
Gotcha. All right. And then you recently sold Totally Science. Did you approach the buyer or did they approach you? How did that go?
Yeah, so I sold it recently. I listed it for sale on flippa.com. And the buyer actually owned a different gaming website. So it was pretty cool that the legacy is going to live on. It's going to be under, he has a few websites, so this is going to be another one to his collection that he is going to grow through SEO, probably to heights that I wouldn't have taken it to just because I had no plans to get SEO running.
Gotcha. And then before you sold it, how did you monetize Totally Science?
So it was monetized through Google AdSense.
Okay, and yeah, I think that's a great option. I've looked into Google AdSense before on very much smaller websites. I never did anything with it, but yeah, I know what you're talking about there. All right, and then after or even during Totally Science, were there any other projects you were working on while you were working on Totally Science?
A few things came up here and there. My first year, when Totally Science attained so many users, I was heavily focused on that. But then the second year, I was getting sick of it slowly and worked on a few smaller things, nothing that took off. One was a platform for some Discord community, which helped people solve homework. And so that was kind of in the same niche as Totally Science, how it's student led. So I was thinking about making some like collaboration between the sites, but that didn't end up working out. But then I started actually towards the end of the second year of Totally Science, I started making mobile apps. And that's actually what caused me to want to sell. I stopped focusing completely on Totally Science and put all my energy into iOS apps. And that's the path I've been down for the last year in mobile apps, which we could discuss. I guess we're going to discuss that next.
Yeah, so what was the first mobile app you made?
So the first app that I released was called Grind Clock. It was a motivational alarm clock app where people, motivational speakers like David Goggins, Joe Rogan, even Andrew Tate, they will basically there's a library of sounds. You could choose one of them to wake you up. So imagine being woken up by David Goggins screaming at you to get out of bed, go carry the boats, and hit the gym.
Gotcha. And did you see a lot of success with that one too?
So we got about 15,000 users in the first 2 weeks with that one.
Gotcha.
And then stopped the marketing efforts and moved on to the next app.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, what marketing did you do for that app?
So we went down the route of influencer marketing for that one. So we had a few motivational pages on TikTok promote it.
Oh, okay. And then what was your second app you worked on?
The second app was a competitive gym app, which we called Flex. Basically, you would join a group with your friends, and then you guys, every time one of you went to the gym, the idea was that you would take a picture there and log your workout. When you logged a workout, it would add one to your streak. So think of a Snapchat streak, how every time you send a snap each day, it will go up. If you miss a day, you'll lose your streak. So it was a similar concept here where your friends would hold you accountable for going to the gym, where basically you would see when your friends go. So you would kind of feel a form of peer pressure if you were the only one that didn't go to the gym. So by the end of development for that, Henry worked on it with me, got sidetracked on our next app. We got a new idea. And so we never really saw the potential for what that app could be. I still believe in it and want to revisit it at some point, but it's a model kind of a social media site. We're not going to have subscriptions where there isn't any obvious way to have them. So that would be something where if we wanted to revisit, we would probably go the venture capital route.
And jumping back a moment to Grind Clock, did you take that off the App Store? Is that still on the App Store?
That's still on the App Store right now.
Okay, and after you stopped the marketing efforts, how many more users were you getting on the app?
So we're still getting users. So that's actually an interesting point because we stopped the marketing efforts. We started working on Flex, but then we looked at the traffic and saw Grind Clock with no marketing was getting around 30 downloads a day without us doing anything. So we saw clearly people liked the app. We could say that was probably attributed partially to the TikTok video still getting some views, to people sharing the app to their friends. And so we decided to revisit it. So it was the first app we built and it looked horrible. We learned a lot of lessons from building Flex. So we revamped the entire app over a 2-day period. We just had late nights, stayed up till 4 a.m., built that out and changed the whole monetization strategy where we made it subscription-based instead of ad-based. I learned a lot about just apps, one, the best business strategies for them, and also just design, user experience over those past few months that we applied here.
And then after that app, where did you go?
So right after revamping it, we revisited with a little more influencer marketing, but didn't take it far because we moved on to a new app, which is Cal AI. So Cal AI is an AI calorie tracking app where you just take a picture of your food and then it will automatically figure out an estimation of the calories, proteins, fats, and carbs in your meal. to track it way faster than typing it in on an app like MyFitnessPal.
All right, and what were the marketing tactics you used on that app?
So we're creating a lot of organic content on TikTok for it.
And are you seeing traffic coming from those videos?
Yeah, we just passed 100,000 downloads. So
Awesome.
it's going pretty well.
Yeah, and what's the future of Cal AI? Any updates you're thinking about? Anything like that?
Yeah, so we basically have the bare bones of an app right now, and there's a lot of new features that I definitely want to add, and the team is pretty small right now, but we are expanding the team. We actually just hired 2 developers, and we're starting to move a lot faster and build this out into our full vision for the app with all the features, making calorie tracking as easy as possible and frictionless.
And have you raised any capital for any of your previous apps?
I've never raised capital in my life. I don't have any plans to. I honestly think a lot of people think the only way to make money or start a business is to raise capital. But I think not having capital raised puts a fire under you that forces you to make it work. And one, it needs to be profitable from the start. But two, you're not going to be lazy and waste any days. So if I wanted to revisit an app like Flex, I think it would require funding just because it probably wouldn't be profitable unless at massive scale. But most of my apps and the app ideas I have, I don't plan on raising for.
Okay. And as AI in general, are there any, like, what do you see as the future of AI in general?
So I was in San Francisco a few weeks ago for a program called On Deck Founders, which was pretty cool. I met a lot of cool people building different startups. And something that many people were working on were AI agents. So they would do just the monotonous tasks that we don't want to do. Like, for example, if you want to message a bunch of people or like unstructured data. So many people have office jobs where they just go through spreadsheets and then like check off boxes or sort data, stuff that is all going to be replaced very soon by just AI agents that use large language models and will automatically go through. A lot of people were building those types of software. And from my conversations with them, I see AI, the future of it, going at least one aspect of it. Because there's so many parts. There's going to be AGI. There's going to be AI that's not like just large language models, but in all kinds of different fields that are very specific and just at the highest level of intelligence. However, for AI agents, I believe we're going to be at the point where humans are going to very rarely need to do any manually like searching on the internet. They won't need to like search something on Google and then go check like the first 3 articles. Everything will just be asked to your personal AI agent and it will go retrieve it for you. I think this will also be for sending text messages or emails where you could have your AI agent just like you could tell your AI agent, go tell my friend this. And then your AI agent will send it over. His AI agent will receive it and then relay the information to him. Where I think at that point, we might have one single interface. Just that's your point of communication to the entire internet.
Yeah, and are you seeing, like, do you think there will be multiple different AIs you interact with, or just like one AI?
So I see it where you'll have one AI you interact with, and then it will delegate tasks to AI models specific for what needs to be done.
Okay, and do you think, like, instead of having, like, downloading an app to your phone, you would download, like, a new AI to your phone that your AI would interact with?
So I think this would change up everything about how we interact with software right now. I mean, in terms of apps, I don't know if this would be an app or if this would be its own hardware. product or if it would be something where it's a website and you interact with it. The only problem I could see with this, and which is why it might not happen, is because interfaces right now, like websites, apps, they're very easy for one, organization purposes, and two, just keeping everything coherent in your mind. If we have just one point of contact where it's just talking back and forth, or even if it was like reading our thoughts somehow, which could be the future with Neuralink. I've actually heard this from someone very smart that the amount of information that we can understand is linear when it's through conversation and dialogue. But in these interfaces that we've built, like websites, apps, we're able to organize, store, go through them exponentially.
Gotcha. And how are you going to implement this whole future of AI more into Cal AI?
Well, it's being built all around us. Like OpenAI is constantly innovating. There's other companies. I don't think there's any clear way to incorporate it into Cal AI, especially because Cal AI is a wrapper app that's built off of OpenAI and other AI models. So for this app, I don't think that's going to happen. But also, this is like the long-term future. So the next 5 years or so, where Cal AI probably won't be like the leading technology of pushing the boundaries where AI can go, unless we start making our own models that will recognize food. But that's something that would be very far out and not in the plan.
And if Cal AI isn't going to get there, what's a venture you haven't really started or a company you're thinking about starting that you haven't done yet?
So I have a ton of app ideas, but none of those are like huge billion-dollar ideas. I am learning a lot and getting a lot of exposure to fields that I've never heard of recently. So I think I'll have some ideas for the big thing soon. I have a bunch of ideas for consumer products, but in terms of something that's going to be groundbreaking, that's something I'm still thinking about. I'm actually going to San Francisco in 3 days. I leave on Thursday and I'll be there all of July, where I'm going to be going full time with working on Cal AI, and I'll also meet a lot of cool people.
Yeah, and are there any other like add-ons you were thinking of adding to Cal AI, even if it's not like a whole nother app, but different enough to make it a little more complex?
Yeah, well, right now we have just basic food scanning capabilities, so tracking your calories. We're about to add a feature where you can log workouts and then it will add the calories you burned from the workout to the calorie intake you have that day. We're going to potentially add features where, well, I'll just say that MyFitnessPal has been the leading app for years, and they have a ton of features built out. Some of them are horrible. They make the user experience very difficult, and I think they're outdated. So what we're trying to do is take all of the features that are first, we took all of the features that were necessary and we made them easier with AI. Now we're going to take all the features that are useful and make those easier with AI as well. So basically just innovating off of everything that's in apps already. So like the exercise feature is something in MyFitnessPal. However, their flow for adding an exercise is a lot more complicated than ours will be once it's done, because we're going to have the AI do a lot of the calculations and make some assumptions that the user won't need to give any input for.
And how accurate has your app been with identifying the calories and all of that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we have a test bench set up where we have a bunch of different foods, and then we'll test out how accurate the AI is on all of them. That's how we work to improve it and make it more accurate. So right now it's sitting at about 90% accuracy. And it's interesting because there was a paper written where someone looked at GPT vision and compared it to a nutritionist for how accurate it is at estimating the calories. And GPT vision was on average 40% more accurate than a nutritionist. So given this information, something like an AI calorie tracking app, although a lot of people believe it will never work, there is clear evidence that it's a lot better than you estimating it yourself and even a nutritionist estimating the value. So when you go to a restaurant, a lot of people, if they cook it themselves at home, okay, you could weigh it on a scale. That takes a lot of time, so it's debatable. Like, if you want to spend the time, you can, but a lot of people don't want to give that much time into this, and they'd rather have 90% accurate results and save time. So saving time or going to a restaurant where you don't know the proportions of the food, Cal AI is far superior than apps like MyFitnessPal.
And besides AI, are there any other new technologies you're thinking of either just exploring for other apps or exploring with Cal AI?
You said in terms of AI technologies?
No, like other technologies besides AI.
Other technologies. So this is actually something interesting that my team wants to do, is build out a bunch of in-house tools for this app, which will allow us to do extensive testing on different flows in the apps and basically get to the point where we could repurpose all of these tools. One, they would help us with efficiency making decisions, giving us better data-driven decision abilities. But secondly, we will be able to repurpose them with future apps. So we will be able to just easily put our foot in the door in a new industry. And there are app studios that there's actually one app specifically we're competing with, which has a big app studio behind it that has apps valued at millions of dollars. And it's very clear that they have all these in-house tools built out, which allows them to just move very fast. And so we want to be able to keep up with people like that, with studios like that.
Gotcha. And before we end off for today's episode, is there anything else you want to add about what you're working on?
So nothing that I'm working on right now is really the long-term goal, but I'm still at a learning stage in my life. Pretty much everything I'm doing is to learn and to move on to a bigger thing next. So this is just the beginning. A lot more is to come. And for anyone watching this, if you're interested in following me, you could follow me on Twitter or X now. You could just look up Zach_Yadagari. And I will be updating my status there. I've actually been very silent on X recently while working on Cal AI, just because of one, competition, and two, because I want to come out of like nowhere and just be like, and here are the numbers, and then I guess shock anyone who was following me previously.
All right, and make sure everyone to go check out Cal AI on the App Store and give it a download, give it a little test out. You guys have a free trial, right, on the app?
Not currently. That's something we've been A/B testing.
Okay. So go take a look at it on the App Store. And thank you, Zach, for coming on. And maybe in the future, if there's ever a big update to Cal AI or you're working on another project, I would love to have you back on.
Thank you, Andrew, for having me.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. See you next time. Bye-bye.